If you're in the market for a dual cab ute, it's a pretty exciting time right now, isn't it? We've got the new Kia Tasman, although I wouldn't call that exciting, I would call that interesting, and then the new BYD Shark. So for this video, I'm going to go over some of the details of this new Shark, but also compare it against some of the rivals, the diesel existing rivals, but also the Ford Ranger Raptor, because a lot of the media seem to be comparing it to that. And I think primarily because of its performance, it's pretty similar performance. But really, they're very different approaches to the dual cab ute market segment. I'll explain further in a second. Firstly, I see a lot of media are reporting this new Shark as a game changer. Now, this is an interesting term, and I don't necessarily think it is a positive term. It just means the game is changing. But what if you're enjoying playing the game that you're playing? It doesn't necessarily mean positive or better, it just means it's different. And that's what the BYD Shark is for sure. It's the first plug-in hybrid dual cab ute to arrive in Australia. Do existing owners or buyers in the dual cab ute market segment want a plug-in hybrid? I think that's a question that's still a bit up in the air. Plug-in hybrids are getting a bit more popular in recent months and even over the past 12 months. If we have a look at VFAX, there have been 17,953 sales of plug-in hybrid models so far this year, so that's the first 10 months of this year. That's up 103% compared with the same period last year. So they're definitely becoming more popular. But in saying that, it's like the EV sales figures as well. There's more EVs arriving on the market, just like there are more plug-in hybrids arriving on the market. So the figures are always going to look a bit more ballooned and a bit more positive than they seem. But I think that's a pretty clear indication that people are starting to take up the idea of plugging in a vehicle or driving a kind of semi-electric vehicle. Ford will have a plug-in hybrid version of its Ranger next year. And then other than that, no company has really officially confirmed anything. So Chery has potentially got a plug-in hybrid coming. Isuzu is even potentially got a plug-in hybrid coming, but not for another 2 or 3 years because they're going to have to do something to get on top of the emissions laws that are coming in. And then also GWM has got a plug-in hybrid version of its Alpha on the way soon as well. So straight away, great work to BYD for being the first on the market. Power comes from a 1.5 litre turbo-petrol 4-cylinder engine, but then it's supported by 2 electric motors. Combined output is 321 kilowatts and 650 newton meters, which is definitely very impressive. And if we just quickly check out the Ranger Raptor, 292 kilowatts and 583 newton meters, definitely more power and more torque than the Ranger Raptor. They're claiming a 0 to 100 time of 5.7 seconds. The best I've got in a Ranger Raptor is 5.79 seconds. Very similar performance. And actually, if we look at the one of the big things the big concerns that I have with this BYD Shark is the weight, 2,710 kilograms. And to me, weight is the enemy of everything. Braking, performance, handling, even your load capacities and all of that, and efficiency. So with that weight and that power, we're left with a power to weight ratio of 118.45 kilowatts per 1,000 kilograms. So for each 1,000 kilograms, you've got 118.45 kilowatts pushing it along. Compared with the Ranger Raptor, 118.08 kilowatts per ton. So very, very similar power to weight ratio between these two. The thing that I am slightly concerned of as well is 321 kilowatts, is that with the battery at maximum capacity? Or does it still produce 321 kilowatts right down to whatever, 10%? Because if it's only at 100% battery, then that's not really the same. And I think there's going to be, it's inconsistent, in other words. You drive it one day when you've got the battery charged, you got full 321 kilowatts. The next day when it's half full, you might be a bit weaker acceleration. Now, I understand that not everybody drives around, using 320 kilowatts everywhere. You're only going to use it for overtaking or going up a steep hill for a second or two. So yes, it doesn't really matter that much. I need to test it though to see what that battery is like when it is flat. Now I understand that it's not going to be resorting completely and solely on that petrol engine. It's always going to have some reserve electric power in there. But it'll be interesting to see anyway. I'll do some performance tests when I can get my hands on one, and I'll try 0 to 100 with a maximum battery, halfway, and then almost dead battery, and see the difference. But yeah, I do think that's worth keeping in mind. Is this going to be consistent performance all the time. The battery is a 29.6 kilowatt hour battery, which is pretty big for a plug-in hybrid, and it provides a range of 100 kilometers, which is okay. It's not the best, actually. If you look at that battery size, in other plug-in hybrids, they've got a smaller battery and they offer a similar range. I think that's due to that weight. Having a look at some other specs now, it's got a water wading depth of 700 millimeters versus 850 in the Ranger Raptor. Approach angle 31 degrees versus 32 degrees in the Raptor. Breakover angle 17 degrees versus 24 in the Ranger Raptor. And then departure angle 19.3 versus 25. So straight away that tells me the Ranger Raptor is, and the ground clearance 272 millimeters in the Raptor versus just 230 in the BYD. 230 is not that impressive for the dual cab ute segment, pushing aside the Raptor for the moment because that's a pretty dedicated off-road machine. 230 is pretty average. Like, it's not anything special, but it's okay. But yeah, as you can see, those specs, definitely the Ranger Raptor is more set up for off-roading. You know, it comes with big chunky tires and whatever, crazy Fox suspension and whatnot. That is definitely a more dedicated machine. And in fact, you know, I would like to watch someone do a jump in a BYD Shark compared with I would happily do a jump in the Raptor, because that weight is just going to smash down that suspension, and it doesn't have crazy Fox suspension either. It's just got normal suspension. Getting to that though, it does have double wishbone suspension front and rear in the BYD, which is very interesting. That's what a Formula One car would, maybe not now, but yeah, racing cars usually have double wishbone front and rear. So that's independent front and rear as well. That could mean not as heavy duty for off-roading. Some fans or off-road fans like a live axle because it pushes the other wheel down into the big beam, pushes the other wheel down onto the ground if you're going over some moguls or whatever. Whereas a independent setup, including double wishbone, you're not going to get that effect of pressing the other wheel down. It's just going to be completely independent. It doesn't matter. But you should have pretty good suspension range, and a good thing about double wishbone is the camber angle doesn't change that much. So if you've got a live axle, you've got a big beam, one wheel goes up a mound or whatever, the tyre is not going to be completely level with the ground. It's going to be on a slight angle. Whereas with double wishbone, you've got enough pivot points and so on that the tyre will remain more flat, more horizontal or parallel with the ground than a live axle. So you do have potentially more grip happening there. BYD says it has a towing capacity of 2,500 kilograms, which is exactly the same as the Ranger Raptor. Definitely down on the other utes that offer 3.5 tons, but you've got to be careful. It's not just 3.5 tons. You've got to actually factor in the payload or the gross combination mass. So that's the maximum allowed package, the whole thing. So the trailer, the people inside, any crap that you want to put in your caravan or whatever, it's all the gross combination mass, and that's the figure you need to look at. So if we look at the BYD Shark, the gross combination mass is 5,750 kilograms, minus 2.5 tons, minus 2,710 curb weight. You're left with 540 kilograms. That's pretty good. That's 4 decent sized blokes and a tiny bit of luggage, or 3, or a family basically. You could have 2 adults, a couple of kids, and plenty of luggage. The Ranger Raptor, you're left with, you've got a 5,370 kilogram GCM, minus 2,473 for the curb weight, minus 2.5 tons. You're left with 397 kilograms. So a little bit weaker in terms of the overall load capacity. But as I said, the diesel utes, some of them don't offer much better. Like even the Hilux and the Navara. The Navara is something like, well, the one I tested last week, the Warrior version, it only left like 120 kilograms. Once you hook up a 3.5 ton trailer, 120 kilograms or something for anything. So that's, unless you're a Tour de France rider or something like that, then you're not going to be getting much on board at all, without breaking the law anyway. For that quick comparison then with the Ranger Raptor, the Raptor is definitely more of an off-road machine. It's got better approach and departure angles, way better breakover angle, better tires, and the suspension is suitable for, hard work. You can smash over bumps and rocks and whatever. Whereas the BYD, I would be a bit worried about the battery because that's mounted right at the bottom of the vehicle, right at the breakover point. So if you're coming over a mound or something like that, I'd be very scared to damage it, or a rock smashes into the thick protection plates and everything, but even still, if that protection plate moves and touches the battery, you only need to damage a cell or something like that, and it could become an expensive fix. I'm interested to see how the BYD Shark does with carrying loads, actually. I want someone to test it, or I'll test it myself. Not with a trailer or anything, just fully loaded. So 5 passengers on board, heaps of gear in the back. The payload is rated at 790 kilograms. So imagine having even 500 kilograms in the back. You're going to be driving around in 3.5 tons pretty quickly, which is, yeah, it's just insane, really. I think that would start to go through some tires pretty quickly as well. Speaking of which, it does wear 18-inch wheels by 8 inches wide, 265/65s. That to me seems a little bit narrow, 265. I think you need something wider than that for a 2.7 ton vehicle. So even the Raptor has 285s on it, on an 8.5-inch rim, 17-inch rim, so smaller rim diameter, but wider. I think if you look at some of the German vehicles, we know that Germans over-engineer things, and yeah, they're overpriced, whatever. I'm not talking about that, but check out some of those big, heavy Mercedes and BMW SUVs. You'll see they've got very, very fat tires, and I think that's for a reason. Obviously, they go on the Autobahn, they have to handle very high speed, but yeah, I think 265 is probably a tiny bit too narrow for this weight. Actually, there you can see the picture. That does have Gitty tires. I hope that doesn't come with Gitty tires in Australia, because in my experience with those, they're just not very good. I had a BYD C-Line just yesterday, and I was testing it for braking. They just seem to skid a lot. So hopefully it doesn't come with those as factory. Just looking at the BYD website here, actually, it does have options for Toyo tires, BF Goodrich, and some different wheels as well. So if you are looking to do off-roading, or if you just want to get better tires, you've got that option there as a sort of factory or semi-factory accessory. Next up, the range. BYD on its website says 800 kilometers or up to 800 kilometers range. I think traditional buyers of utes like a good range. I think, they do a lot of touring. They even, miners and stuff like that. They go deep down into the dirt or whatever they do, and they need a good range. So I think 800 kilometers is okay. It's not anything special. And in fact, if we look at, I know I keep reverting to a Ford Ranger, but I just happen to have it open here on Redbook. Ford Ranger, wild track, 2-litre diesel, fuel economy rating of 7.2 litres per 100 kilometers. You've got a theoretical range, 80-litre tank, theoretical range of 1,111 kilometers. So definitely that's 200 kilometers, 300 kilometers more potential in the normal diesel Ranger. What about the interesting features of the BYD? Forgetting comparisons now, let's just have a look at some of the interesting features. BYD says it's got the world's first longitudinal EHS drive assembly. So that's basically longitudinal engine mounting, 4-cylinder inline, pointing north-south, if you like, which is a little bit unusual for a hybrid, they're saying, but it's not unusual for any of the utes. They're all mounted north-south like that. And then the electric motor is, one of the electric motors is housed within that line as well. But what's probably more interesting is the fact that you can charge it using DC power at up to 40 kilowatts, which means you can get from, 10 to 80% in 20 minutes or something, which is awesome. Like most plug-in hybrids, you can use just normal AC power or 3-phase power, maybe up to 7 kilowatts or maybe up to 11. I think maybe some of them do, but most, I've got a 22 kilowatt charger here. Every plug-in hybrid I've had takes in around 6 to 7 kilowatts. That's it. So for this to be able to take in 40 kilowatts is really good. You could potentially go on a big drive to work, stop by your local charging station, plug it in for 20 minutes, juice it back up to 100 kilometers, away you go, and not use the petrol engine at all. And then lastly, the interior features and technology. Having a look at the interior just with these photos, it looks very impressive. It looks modern. It's got a huge rotating touchscreen. So BYD has this thing where it likes to have a big touchscreen that you can rotate horizontal and vertical. I think that's a little bit of a gimmick. I drove the BYD C-Line, as I said, the other day, and the screen is so big that when you rotate the screen, the top of it actually, well, in my case, I'm pretty short, it actually blocks a bit of my view through it comes above the dashboard, which I think is, I don't know. I mean, maybe you don't drive around like that. Maybe it's there just to fiddle with when you're stopped. or charging or something like that. I don't know, but it just seems a little bit gimmicky in my opinion with a 10.25-inch screen for the instrument cluster. You've also got vehicle to load capability, so that means you can plug in tools and accessories and so on into the vehicle and use some of that 29.6 kilowatt hour battery. And then lastly, just want to talk about the design. I think it's really clean. It does borrow a little bit from Ford, I reckon, just the way those headlights have that sort of C shape around. Ford F-150, even Ford Ranger, kind of, with the big BYD letters across the middle. But, you know, it's not really Ford's claim. They can't say, you know, oh, we have a badge that's big letters across the front. Like, that's not really a thing. I do think it looks very nice though. It looks very clean, elegant. It doesn't have weird shapes going on like some other new utes we've seen recently. Yeah, I think it will do well. It's got a lot of showroom appeal as well. You just walk in, you go, wow, that's a cool looking ute. And then you see the features and the powertrain. I think it will attract a lot of buyers, and it has attracted a lot of buyers. It's got something like 1,000 orders already in the first day or something like that. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see anyway. I really want to test this thing. I want to do some performance testing. I want to do some off-road testing to see what that battery is like when it starts getting pretty low. Will it be the same output? Will it feel a bit weird and a bit different? Let's see.